And then I guess other than Ed, I mean, all of the full-time and round-the-year faculty there are amazing, but one of the things is in the summer they would bring all these people through, and if I just listed the names, it would probably blow your mind that I was inspired by so many of them. But I mean, there were great readings there by Victor Hernandez-Cruz and Peter Lamborn Wilson, who some people know as Hakeem Bey. He wrote Temporary Autonomous Zone, which is probably illegal at this point. Just the existence of the book is probably illegal. It's about things like poetic terrorism. It's about sort of taking the ideas of you know, poetry to their most logical conclusion, including slightly dangerous things that could happen. But anyway, Hakeem Bey and Peter Lamborn Wilson is one of these guys where I don't know where he gets his money from or how he lives, but all that he does is deep research on really sort of like esoteric subjects and then writes these beautiful books about them. So he did a lecture on money, talked for about an hour on money, and that blew everyone's mind. And then I was not a huge fan of Robert Creeley, but just to give you an idea of what can happen there, in the summertime they do a summer writing program where, at least for a time, it would happen in this tent and there'd be folding chairs like we have now. And if there was somebody there who came, and it was an all-day thing and an all-night thing during the summer, panels, readings, performances, films, and workshops if you were a student. So Robert Creeley comes and basically like unloads the blueprint of his mind, like what led to him, you know, the things that inspired him as a poet. So if you were like the person where Creeley was your guy, then you have everything that you need. You've got a homework assignment for life. And that was my experience at Naropa in general, is that if you were paying attention and the person that happened to be in front of you, you know, if you had affinities, then you really had a homework assignment for life. And one of the things that Anne Wallman, who started with Ginsberg, talks about a lot is poetic lineage, which I had no sense of before. And it's related to Buddhism because it has to do with the transmission between teacher and student. That's an energy as well as an informational thing. So you, as soon as you realize that no matter who you are or where you came from or whether you knew a lot about poetry before or not, that you are connected simply by trying to do this poetry thing to a poetic lineage, if you plug into that, it's as powerful as your family tree could be if you were to go on a kind of like a genealogy type search. But yeah, so I hope you're not regretting having asked now.
No, no.
Yeah. I have a lot to say about all these things, obviously.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Chris, I think my question dovetails on what you just said, but I'm wondering, we're sitting in a Chinese garden during tea month. During this era when the garden was at its height, there was a holding container in China for poetry. For devoting your whole life to poetry, there was a holding container for devoting your whole life to the way of tea. What's it like for you devoting your whole life to something that the culture doesn't provide a holding container for and really doesn't value?
Yeah, well, I value personal freedom, and I don't really like telling people what to do. It's like something, and it's a basic golden rule type thing. I hate being told what to do, so I don't like to tell it to people. So even when you get to a place like where I am now, where I have a certain role in the community and I'm mentoring certain people, you know, one of the things that I learned from people like Ginsberg, because I had a little contact with him and others, people there, is how much more you learn from modeling. So like what I've been trying to do is model a way of being a poet. And the kind of thing is that we live in a culture where it's marginalized and misunderstood. And that's not always people's fault. Like sometimes it's the way it was presented to them was limited, or the person who presented to them didn't know what they were talking about and presented to them in the wrong way, or a way that made it seem boring or irrelevant to them, you know? So I don't mind at all. I actually love being the guy that helps people to realize this thing is can be relevant and meaningful. And the main way that we do that is through the open mic that we host, which is going to celebrate 10 years in 2014 in Vancouver. We call it Ghost Town Poetry Open Mic because that's my little nickname for Vancouver, Ghost Town. So, and anyone who's here is from Portland, I probably don't have to explain why I called it that. So, the thing is, so people who came out of a classroom or out of an educational context where what they learned is this thing is boring, or this thing is just for academics, or it's a stuffy, boring thing, they get to see just by coming to the open mic, whether they participate in it or not, that it's fun, and that the poems are not all, they don't all rhyme, they're not all completely incomprehensible to them if they haven't, you know, done a whole, you know, spent their life studying Western civilization, that, you know, there are things about it that are fun and interesting to them. And so, you know, I'm looking to people like Sanders, like Ginsberg, people who are willing to not just in a selfish way try to write great poems, but also wanted to engage with the community. And I was telling someone this earlier, the way that Naropa approaches Buddhism is, their program is called Engaged Buddhism. So the idea is you take the principles of Buddhism to go out into the community and try to promote and encourage and, you know, to be an activist, to promote change in the community. So yeah, so I have a great sort of model in these people for being a person who represents poetry to the public. And the thing is, if we don't take ourselves seriously, because we're doing this thing that most people don't know what to do with, we can't expect anybody else to take us seriously either. So I'm trying to do it in a professional way and take myself seriously and also have fun with it, and hopefully the message will get across just when they have a chance to hang out with us at Ghost Town, you know. It seems like it's working, you know? Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. Please, I realize people probably really want to go. Before you go, there's some flyers and a couple of books that people might be interested in. We have the cards for Beth's upcoming performance. So thanks again to Daniel and Gary and everyone here, and really big thanks to Beth Karp for playing with me today.
Again, if you didn't get one of Chris's broadsides, there's one here. There's also a flyer rack card of the entire poetry series that will be going on this month at the Garden and the different poets.
And we do have every Thursday.